Okay, so hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today, what I want to talk about is how we can defend the Christian faith without using scripture. So, a lot of times nowadays too, is you hear people say that when you're trying to defend your faith and you're using scripture, you'll hear people say, well, that's what it's for. It's for your stuff. So obviously you're going to believe it because you've grown up or you've built almost a ritual to hearing these scriptures. So that's why you say these things. How do you know that's true though? And so I just want to give some practical ways to defend the faith without scripture, just so when those cases arise, potentially in my life or some of your guys' life, that you'll still be able to defend your faith even without using scripture. So, introduction here. So many people think that faith is simply just a leap in the dark, a blind acceptance of something without evidence. But now this is a misunderstanding. Now Christianity, it does not require shutting off our minds. It actually invites us to use them. And now, in fact, Christian belief can be defended using philosophy, science, history, and reason. And so in this presentation, we will explore how we can make a compelling case for Christianity without even quoting the Bible. Appealing against its logic, observable evidence, and historical facts. So, first is, why does this matter? Well, in a skeptical culture, many dismiss Christianity as outdated or irrational. But while personal faith is deeply important, we must also be prepared to explain why it is reasonable to believe what we believe in. So a thoughtful defense of Christianity shows that it is not merely wishful thinking. It is grounded in evidence that stands up to scrutiny. Now, our goal is not to win arguments, but is to remove intellectual barriers so people can genuinely consider Christ. And so that's what we're going to look at in this presentation. So, the question of origin. So, one of life's biggest questions is, and you guys may have had this question yourself, why is there something rather than nothing? Well, the scientific consensus is that the universe had a beginning. Time, space, and matter all came into existence. Now, anything that begins to exist must have a cause. Now, random chance, it cannot explain the origin of everything. And that's because chance operates within existing laws and materials. The most reasonable explanation is that the universe was caused by an eternal, uncaused, powerful, and intelligent source. Next is the fine-tuning of the universe. So scientists have discovered that the physical constants of the universe, such as the force of gravity, the strength of the electromagnetic force, and the mass of the proton, are set at values so precise that even the tiniest variation would make life entirely impossible. Now, the odds of this happening by chance are astronomically small. The fine-tuning points towards intentional calibration, much like a watch implies a watchmaker. So there is so intentional calibration, there's so the fine details, the small microscopic details. It's like a watch. In a watch, you have all these gears and wires and stuff that if one thing's wrong, then it's not going to work properly. And that's the same thing with the universe. It has to have the intentional fine-tuning and calibration for it to work the way it is, or life will not happen. And so this level of precision that we see in the universe strongly suggests that there is intelligent design and not just random chance that the universe exists. So the reality of moral law is another one. So across cultures and history, humans share a core sense of right and wrong. Murder, theft, and injustice are universally condemned throughout the world, but kindness, honesty, and justice are universally praised. And now this sense of morality exists beyond personal preference or social custom. Now, if morality is truly objective, which means it applies to all people at all times, it must come from a source higher than humanity itself. Now, this points towards a moral lawgiver, which, as Christians, we know is God. And that moral lawgiver is one who embodies and defines what is good, which is, of course, God. Now, what is the problem with moral relativism? Well, if morality is just a human invention, then no action can truly be called wrong in an ultimate sense. So atrocities in history such as slavery, genocide, oppression, it could be defended if morality were purely subjective, yet our instincts tell us these things are truly universally wrong. The existence of such moral absolutes makes far more sense if there is a transcendent source of morality outside of the human opinion. Now, historical evidence of Jesus. So this is where we get into people like, oh, with scripture you can prove Jesus, but without scripture you can't. Well, that's false. We can. Without the Bible, we can establish the historical reality of Jesus of Nazareth. Ancient Roman historians like Tacitus, or Tacitus, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but him and Jewish historians like Josephus and other early sources confirm that Jesus lived, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate, and he had followers who claimed that he rose from the dead. And now these accounts are written both by believers and non-believers, which verify key details that are the foundation to the Christian claim. So the rise of Christianity is another proof that Christianity is real and that Jesus and God is real. So within a generation of Jesus' death, the Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, despite brutal persecution. So the movement, it grew rapidly, not because it offered wealth or political power, but because people were convinced that Jesus had risen from the dead. Many of the earliest witnesses willingly faced imprisonment, torture, and death rather than denying what they had seen. And so that right there just tells me that what we're talking about, what we believe, is true. Because if there are people who will willingly face imprisonment, torture, and death rather than denying what they've seen firsthand, then that just proves that something is true. Who would give up their life? Who would give up, who would go through torture? Who would face imprisonment for something that's not true? Nobody would. That's just common sense. Nobody would want to go through these things if what they believed wasn't true. And because these people did, it just shows that what they believed, what they seen was true. And this commitment is just hard to explain if the resurrection were a fabrication. Next is the empty tomb. Again, this is something people say, oh, it's only in scripture. It's not. One historical fact almost all scholars agree on is that Jesus' tomb was found empty. Now, the enemies of early Christianity could have easily stopped the movement by producing his body. If there was enemies of Christianity who wanted to prove that it was fake, that he didn't rise from the dead, then they would have just showed us his body. But they couldn't. They did not show us his body, which means what we believe is true. He did rise from the dead because nobody could give his body up. And if they really wanted to prove that something was wrong, or that Christianity was false, they could have easily just showed us his body and that would prove it, but they didn't. And now, alternative explanations such as theft of the body or hallucination of all these people, they collapse under scrutiny because there are so many people that have seen Jesus after he rose from the dead. And the simplest and most consistent explanation with the historical evidence is that something extraordinary happened. And that something convinced his followers he was alive again. Next is the uniqueness of Christianity. So, unlike many religions, Christianity does not primarily teach that humanity must work its way up to God through rituals or moral efforts. Instead, it declares that God has come down to humanity in human form through Jesus, and its message of grace is unique among other world religions. This radical concept has inspired compassion, forgiveness, and a redefinition of what it means to be in a relationship with the divine. Transformation through the ages. So Christianity has actually profoundly shaped the world. Without it, we wouldn't have many things, because it drove the establishment of hospitals, universities, orphanages, and countless humanitarian movements. It also helped with the abolition of slavery, the push for universal education, and the defense of human rights. And they have all been championed by people who are motivated by their Christian convictions. And now, while we as humans are imperfect, and a lot of us have misrepresented the faith at times and misrepresented God and Christ, the overall impact of genuine Christian teaching has been transformative in what we see in the world today. If Christianity was false, we would have none of the things that make up the world today, which just proves that Christianity is the truth. So the power of personal experience. So philosophical and historical arguments are powerful, but the experiences that people have lived through as believers bear much more weight, and bear similar, if not more weight, actually. And across cultures and centuries, people have reported radical life changes. They've reported freedom from destructive habits and deep peace after encountering Christ. And one of my favorite examples, if you haven't heard of him before, is he used to go by the name of Boonk Gang, but now he goes by the name of Holy Gabbana, or John Gabbana. If you haven't seen his testimony, search him up on social media, search him up on Google, whatever. John Gabbana, Holy Gabbana. He used to, if you look at some of his old videos, he lived a life of crime, gang, theft. He was pretty much a bad person. He was what we would consider a terrible person, but in God's eyes, he was more than that. And he switched his life around. Now he is a radical for for Jesus, and you should search him up again. That's Holy Gabbana, Holy Gabbana. I believe that's right. So search him up, look into him. He had a radical life change, which just shows that Christianity is truth and God is true. So, and while personal stories are subjective, the sheer consistency of these testimonies across time and geography adds to the cumulative case for Christianity's truth. A cumulative case for faith. So when we bring all the evidence together, the origin and fine-tuning of the universe, the existence of moral law, the historical reality of Jesus, the empty tomb, the explosive growth of the early church, and the ongoing transformation of lives, we see that there is a coherent and compelling picture. Christianity, it offers the best explanation for the world as we know it, for the moral truths we hold dear, and for the hope that humanity longs for. So in conclusion, Christianity, it is not merely a set of religious claims. It is a worldview that stands up to reason, evidence, and historical scrutiny. While it ultimately calls for personal trust, it does not ask for blind belief. It is a faith that invites investigation and welcomes honest questions. The decision to believe is not only a matter of the heart, but also a conclusion that the mind can affirm as reasonable and true. And that does it for this video. We have common sense of how we can defend our faith without scripture. This just proves that Christianity is even more true than what we thought just based on scripture, guys. So I hope you found this video helpful. Hopefully it helps you in your walk with Jesus and with God, Jesus, God, whatever, that same person, Trinity, whatever, and that it helps you be able to defend your faith without using scripture. And with this, I pray that you're able to win souls for Christ. And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us a lot. Share this video with somebody you think might find it helpful. And follow me on Instagram, link in the description, also in the bio. Have a great day, guys. God bless.